you've bought several properties in the last, let's call it 8 years. Whereas for some other people, I mean, they may only buy one property in 10 years and that's going to be it. And I think there's a little less importance in finding that slam dunk when you're in that situation, but for you, that didn't make sense. So
you're so right and I think it keeps coming back to, having that clarity of what you want for your life plan. And the happy circumstance from that is we started renting and we realized this is awesome and we want to do more of it.
All right, what's up, everybody? We are back with another episode of the Seattle Living and Wealth Building Podcast. Justin Day, how's it going?
Awesome, yeah. Looking forward to another great day. I can't wait to speak to our guest and get a little bit of insight. Michael, welcome.
Welcome, Justin. Thank you for welcoming me. I'm really excited to speak with Sarah today. We've never met, but I know she's got a lot of experience in real estate, so talking to a client that's also well aware of what's going on is great. But
awesome. All right, well, that's exciting. So let's get right into it, shall we? So Sarah, thanks for joining us all the way from Bend, Oregon.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to see you guys.
Well, great. It's great to have you. So Sarah and I, as background for everybody, we've known each other for 8, 9, 10 years now. I've known her and her husband, Paul Bedwell, and they've gone through some various stages in their life, moving back here to Seattle from the UK and then down to Bend, Oregon.
That's right. I was in my 20s when we met. I miss those days.
The 20s. That is about 20 years ago for me. So
I thought you were going to.
We've had some great journeys since then. I wouldn't change a minute of it.
Yeah. So the fun thing let's talk about what brought you from the UK and what were you doing in the UK first to begin with, and what brought you back to Seattle?
Yeah, I mean, it was so fun to remember those days because I kind of had a classic Tableau tech story where I started at Tableau software back when it was 70 people and kind of this like broken down office tucked into a dirty corner of Fremont. And Tableau, I think a lot of Seattleites know that story. It ended up being an incredibly successful IPO and tech company. So when they decided, hey, we're going to establish our European headquarters, they said, somebody's got to go over there, but you have to go in 2 weeks. And so I raised my hand. I was like, me, I want to go.
Wow.
So I broke up with my boyfriend. I rented my apartment out unseen, and I flew over to London and helped kind of develop that office over the next 3 years. And, it's fortunate because I did end up meeting Paul there, who ended up becoming my husband. So we had an amazing time over there, but the plan was always to move back to Seattle, move back to family. And Maynard, I don't know if you want me to tell the part of, where we started to meet you, but I'll follow your lead on that.
No, absolutely. Go right in.
So I remember it because this will probably resonate with everyone. We were literally thinking prices keep going up in Seattle. And keep in mind, this is back in, 2013.
Yeah.
How are we going to afford a house back then with those prices? And so we felt a lot of urgency about, finding a place and getting on the real estate ladder. We had not purchased any homes until then. We were renters. And so we were going back for a wedding in kind of fall of 2013. And we said, well, let's try to meet up with an agent and see if we can find something that we're moving back this Christmas. Maybe we'll get lucky, find a place. And so my husband did a ton of online research, and he actually found Maynard purely online because he just really liked the messaging and the authenticity that Maynard was using back then. And Maynard, you tell me, I mean, how long were you into your career at that point in real estate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I was just a few years into real estate. So, prior to that, just having a background in finance and accounting and getting my MBA, I think I got into real estate because it fell in naturally. And at that time, I was on a real estate portal that not a lot of people knew about called Zillow.
Oh, that's right.
You guys heard of Zillow before?
Right.
Yeah. So Paul found me on Zillow, and I remember getting on the phone with him, and he goes, "Hey, mate, I've met an American girl. I'm coming back to the U.S." So
man.
that was it. And that was our first, at least, conversation before we started getting to the real estate part of things.
That's
well,
funny.
and I'm so glad that you reminded me, because actually your finance background was another thing that he loved, because he always wanted someone who understood how to think like an investor, and both. So we flew over, and Maynard was so kind, and he, met us, and we probably saw, I think I counted at the time, it was, I think 23 houses in 2 days.
Wow.
And it was our first go. And what I really loved about working with Maynard at that time is I'm a pretty like big feeler. And he was really listening and empathetic to that, and also just totally calm through the whole process. And we ended up finding a place, which I couldn't believe, but it was in Queen Anne. I really wanted Queen Anne, because we were thinking about family and thinking about schools. And I was going to come back and work at the Tableau headquarters, and of course they're in Fremont.
Yeah.
And I remember, it was on the corner of 9th, and I'm trying to remember what the cross street was,
Barrett.
but it was basically, what was it?
Barrett
Yes.
Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Barrett. And so it was a little bit of a busier intersection, not busy for most places, but I think that's why, it hadn't gone instantaneously. And so we said, okay, we're going to do it. So we put an offer in, I think Maynard did a great job of negotiating, because we found some deferred maintenance. It was an older place, like 1910 built craftsman. We got accepted, we got into contract. And then I realized, I should have seen this coming. In Britain, they don't do anything over the Christmas holiday. That is not a thing. That's probably true here too.
Yeah.
So I found myself in the middle of the English countryside, trying to drive around and find someone who could apostille, or I don't even remember the word, our documents. I mean, I literally was about to have a breakdown, but we got it signed. We got the home purchased from overseas. So Maynard helped us literally sign and do that contract while we were in Britain. And then I flew over, and we got the house up and running. And that was our first. I think we've at this point now bought 6 homes and sold 2, most of them with Maynard. But this was our very first baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
wild,
a fascinating story. Especially, so it sounds like, you took a couple, I don't want to say risks, but you took some big kind of leaps of faith there, right? So you moved to go, chase something that you wanted, then you decided to move back, and then you happen to be on the other side when you actually closed on the house. So you're driving around looking for a notary, which could have been very stressful. So that's awesome.
You point out a good observation, which is, I think one thing that's been the kind of the overarching thread of our real estate journey has been, we've always tried really hard to be in touch with ourselves and what we really wanted out of life. And once we had that clarity, I think it gave us the confidence to then go out and be decisive, and make a decision. But we've never tried to do real estate purely just to maximize dollars. I think it's always been kind of life led. And so you're right. Then I think we were more comfortable taking risks, because we were kind of clear on our North Star.
So Sarah, based on your story, what I see is a couple things. So, I wouldn't call it risk, but you are willing to take some leaps of faith here, both with your personal life, your career, and real estate. So you took a leap of faith, you took a job, you ditched your boyfriend in order to do that. You got interested in real estate, met a love of your life, and then you guys kind of make this what seemingly impossible transaction to buy something while you're in the UK, but you buy something back in Seattle. So kudos to you for getting through that.
Well, I'm going to have you introduce me in the future, because you make it sound so dreamy. And also, I feel like I would be remiss without saying that particular person I was dating is an amazing person who may still live in Seattle. And I'm very sorry that things worked out in that way. All the respect to that person too. But I think you're completely right that I think what we've always just tried to do is to do that thinking and feeling process that you do on what we really want out of life. And then because we knew that when the right opportunities came, we felt really good about, being decisive and making the move. And I think that's something that we continue to do. In fact, at the end, Maynard, I might have a surprise one to share with you that I'm not sure if you even know about.
Oh, awesome.
Ooh, we love surprises.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Sarah, one thing that I wanted to ask was back in 2013, you said that, part of the reason why you wanted to make a purchase was because you felt like you were being left behind. And that's something that we speak to buyers about on a daily basis, especially first-time home buyers, especially people who are millennials who are just getting into the market. And, especially with prices increasing the way they are right now and interest rates being, as historically low as they are, it's a great opportunity for a lot of people. So what was it back in 2013 that kind of pushed you over the edge and made you say, hey, I want to buy in this market?
It's such a good question, and it does go back, as I'm reflecting, to what Michael was just noticing, which is we knew that it wasn't just for financial gain. Like, we knew that we wanted to build a life there and have a home that we could make a home permanently, in a good school district and start a family. So we knew that we were okay maybe weathering a little bit of volatility. And, keeping in mind, like, I lived through 2007, like everybody. So I knew that the market could go down, but we knew for our timeline, we were okay accepting some of that. And then in addition, just the trend lines were all pointing one direction. And I feel like that's still the case now. My little brother is, kind of checking out the market, I think, as for the first time. And it's the same thing where you always wish you'd bought a year or two before. But if you're doing it for the right life reasons, and then you're also looking at the trend lines, I think it sets you up for a pretty good position. And keeping in mind, we used to think a good interest rate was like 7% back in 2007 for a first-time buyer.
Yeah.
So I keep reminding him, even though it's going to go up a little bit, you're getting like half price for what I thought was good. So I guess it's taking that bigger perspective. And also where Maynard's always really helped educate me is on the historical perspective, which I've always loved the education stuff that he does.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you think about it, interest rates are increasing right now, and I think they're going to stay relatively flat or maybe increase a little bit throughout 2022. But people always feel like they're being left behind with interest rates because they're increasing. And the actual fact is that, guess what? They're probably going to go back down again. We may not see them quite into the historical levels that we saw throughout 2021, but it's very possible that that's going to be the case.
So I think what's interesting, right, is we talked about you getting that first property, and then not everybody might have noticed that you said we've done 6-7 transactions together. So how did you go from that first property in 2013 to, if I'm looking at it, you got the 2013, then you ended up finding another house that was more of a modern home in 2014. In the meanwhile, you picked up an investment property. Did you have all those answers lined up at that time?
No, in fact, it's very much been one step at a time. So, we bought the Queen Anne home Christmas of 2013. It was literally like, I think practically on that holiday. And then we lived in it for about, I think, most of 2014. And we realized this was a really good investment. So because of Tableau, and because Tableau actually went public that year, I did have some capital, or we had some capital. And we really wanted to diversify it, not just in the market. And the reason was we would love to retire at maybe like 55 if we can. So we knew that we needed to balance, market type investments that are going to be that long-term growing nest egg that you want to grow as long as possible and not touch, with assets that would produce cash, where we would have cash to retire with. So we started looking around and we found that really great place on Dexter. We ended up buying, I don't know if you'd call it a townhome, because it was much more unique than that, but similar to that concept.
A little duplex. Yeah. It's an older style.
And it was great. So we ended up, I think we picked that up for about $430,000 in January of 2015. So about a year later. Yeah. And then I was pregnant at the time, and we were making these really rational decisions. And then all of a sudden, I remember it was springtime, right? In Seattle. And I was home by myself. Paul was out. And I look at the kitchen door, and we'd been doing so much work on this 1910 house we lived in. You wouldn't believe it. Rain started coming in the kitchen door because a little seal on the door had failed. Now, in the perspective of a 1910 craftsman, that's just not that big a deal. You expect those types of things. Yeah. But I was very pregnant, and I was just not here for it. And so I called Maynard, and I was like, I want to move. And we started looking. And so, he, as always, did such a good education effort with us. And, shortly thereafter, we ended up finding a beautiful, brand new place that just had incredible architecture. I always wanted a place that you walk in and you didn't even need to put decoration in, because the home was just the decoration because of the architecture.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we found that. Yeah. Do you remember like when we found that place?
Well, I absolutely remember it because it was an architectural masterpiece. It was absolutely beautiful, and it was a big flip from 1910 gorgeous craftsman with period details to modern, wow, jaw-dropping homes. So both in Queen Anne, though, like probably 500 yards from each other, maybe.
Oh wow!
Yes, which is incredible. And are you? I mean, Justin and Michael, are you seeing more people attracted to the craftsman or the new, or is it a total mix?
I see a mix, but this last summer, everybody was going for the craftsman. I mean, especially Queen Anne, Green Lake, Fremont, right where you're talking about. There's a lot of really cool neighborhoods there that are all older homes, and those places were going nuts. Yeah, people still really, really want those houses.
I love the question.
And that was the same when we were looking. So that's been consistent then.
Yeah.
And Justin, you were saying that's been true for you too?
Absolutely. I love the question because, the single family house market is very unique right now. I mean, you can get a lot of character with a lot of these older homes, and that's not something you see with a lot of newer construction. And so I find that the majority of people, if they're buying in the city of Seattle, are looking for something that has those period details or that charm to it. Whereas if you go out into areas like Bothell, for instance, I mean, that doesn't exist. Right. Everything is from, 1980 and newer. So I think people are kind of focusing their homeownership journeys based on those different factors that go into the location. So, right.
It's funny, as I'm thinking about lessons learned from what you're saying and then all these transactions we've done, I have found we have bought some homes and then either sold or rented them that were a little different. Like we kind of got them at a discount because there was something a little funky about them. And then we've had other homes that were slam dunk. It was what everybody wanted, like the craftsman. And I will tell you, I now lean towards just going for the slam dunk, and you do pay the premium up front, but they rent instantaneously and they appreciate incredibly well. And then when you go to sell them, they sell incredibly well, because what we've found happens with the funky properties is then when you go to sell them, it's the same situation. You don't have as big a buyer pool, and then you end up selling it for a discount. So you don't, at least that's been our experience. I'm sure it's not everyone's experience, but anyway, you're making me think about that.
Yeah. No.
That's really interesting, actually.
I think that's bang on. I mean, when you look at the market in general right now, I mean, the most compelling homes are going crazy. And the places that are a little bit funky, a little bit quirky, are the ones that tend to take, maybe they're not going above list price, or maybe they're not even selling on a review date. But
that's been our experience.
Yeah, but you're 100% right. I mean, but I think it goes to the point though that everyone's journey is a little bit different. And for you bought that beautiful craftsman home, and then you bought this townhouse, and then you ended up buying this architectural masterpiece, as Maynard calls it.
I want to see that.
But for you, I mean, it was a part of that journey to try and figure out, okay, what type of house made the most sense for you. So for you, you've bought several properties in the last, let's call it 8 years. Whereas for some other people, I mean, they may only buy one property in 10 years, and that's going to be it. And I think there's a little less importance in finding that slam dunk when you're in that situation, but for you, that didn't make sense. So
you're so right and I think it keeps coming back to, having that clarity of what you want for your life plan. Because Paul and I will try to talk, what do we want for the next 2 to 5 years as far as we know. And we knew that, we wanted to be nested, but it didn't have to be the, we're going to be here for 30 years home in either of those cases. We've since moved to Bend, and now we were looking for the place that we want to be for 30 years. And I did see it differently. I was really, really picky with this place. So I think you're right. It's about getting clarity on what you really want and need and your timelines. And then you can make good decisions on that basis.
So I'm curious though, because, when you purchased the first home in, 2013, did you purchase that place with the intention of utilizing it as a investment property down the road? Or was the intention to buy it as a primary residence, live in it for 5 or 10 years, and then see what happens?
So great question. And this is an example of, I am not smart at real estate. We just have had really great
I
advisors.
disagree.
Yeah.
Well,
I think
we've been very lucky, we try to lead with our heart and then rationalize it with our brain. So at the time when we bought it, we were hoping to be in it for quite a while. In fact, the reason we bought such a big home was because Paul's family comes to stay with us from England. So they come for 2 weeks at a time. He's one of 5 siblings and then multiple sets of parents. So they come 2 by 2, like the Ark, and they stay for 2 weeks at a time. I mean, we needed like a good setup,
Yeah.
And I think it was one of those cases that we were fortunate enough that it, to an extent, you go for what you think you want, and then you learn. And I learned that actually, as much as I think those homes are gorgeous, for me, I don't have the emotional temperament for the maintenance that they require. Paul has that. I mean, none of that stuff bothered him at all. So I think as long as you're educated about saying, if I'm going to buy a home that's 100, 110 years old, we need to set aside this much budget for maintenance. We've got great vendors. Awesome. You will do so great. If that's not for you, it just wasn't for me, then I've tended more towards the newer homes. But I didn't know that when we purchased it. We did hope we'd be there longer. But then we got to hold on to it. And the happy circumstance from that is we started renting and we realized this is awesome and we want to do more of it.
Right. One of the things I love what you're kind of addressing is that you're talking about, kind of leading with your feeling. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because they feel like they're going to make a mistake somehow, but of course you're figuring out the numbers and everything, but leading with the feeling, I think, is what we as a team really actually encourage, before we have the technical conversation and the numbers and the specs and your list of wants, whatever. We just try to get to know the person. So I think, for you to say you don't know anything about real estate, it's BS. I think, just having that clarity is so different because people get caught up in the specifics first without thinking about, okay, who am I as a person? What do I want? Am I somebody that is willing to do the work? People will go, well, I could fix that. I could fix that. I could fix that. But then if you don't really have that conversation, well, you could do that, but what's your temperament? Like for you, you got the clarity that I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in a remodel for 2 years,
It's funny you say that because the way I was raised was, to be completely rational and not pay attention to what you want. And so it was literally as I was moving to England and meeting Paul and all of that, that was the first time I was learning the riches of listening to your heart. And so it's interesting to hear you say a lot of people struggle with that. But I think, I've been through it with the Tableau stock. We sold it and then it went sky high. And there were a lot of people who did that and they were devastated that they hadn't optimized their gain. But I've just never felt like that. I think for many of the people in Seattle, because of the jobs they do, not everyone at all, but, we're some of the most fortunate, blessed people that have ever lived in the history of humanity as it stands. And so I just try to remember we only get 85 years or so, whatever. If you had to spend that like cash, what do you want to spend that time on? And so then we make our investment decisions on that basis. And think where we've been lucky is we've made those decisions because that's what we wanted for our family. And then the market has picked up, first in Seattle, and then we bought in Bend when it was half price to what it is now. But even if it had been different, even if it went down, I would not have been sad because it's what we wanted for our family. So I think you're hitting on something pretty profound there, Michael. I agree.
Just
That's totally true.
That's so spot on though. I mean, that's awesome. I think, this looking over your shoulder, I regret I didn't buy, or I regret I sold my stock too early. And, you got to think about it as like, okay, all this stuff is a tool for us as people. Right. So yeah, I think that's awesome. You have that rock solid.
Yeah, and you don't have to have the plan in place for all the steps in the future too, right? Because you started with the first acquisition of real estate and it fit into your lifestyle. Then it didn't fit into your lifestyle, so you bought a new home that fit your lifestyle. In the meantime, you had an opportunity with some extra capital to do the Tableau, and then you bought an investment. And then at some point now, you don't have any assets here in Seattle, and then you're in Bend, right? I don't think you planned that at the very beginning.
No, you're so right. In fact, pregnancy, I'm realizing, like, has factored into a lot of my decisions. So we were in the architectural marvel, and my son is like a month old at this point. He's been born, and we love it, and it's beautiful, and we love Seattle so much, and we have great jobs. I mean, it was fantastic. And I got shingles because I was up all night, feeding the baby. And then our poor cat had an accident. So he was waking up the baby. So I was like a wreck in every sense of the word. Yeah. And that was when they came out with an article about, the earthquake and everything like that. And so I thought, okay, well, like, let's think about this and, what does it mean for our house? So I actually had a geoengineer come out. This tells you how, emotional state I was. And he looked at the house and he was like very reassuring. He's like, this is good. This is solid ground. And in fact, if you ever have that concern, I recommend a geoengineer. They will give you so much peace of mind. You sleep at night. But it got me thinking, man, like, where do we want to be? Because Seattle's always had my heart. I mean, that is the best city I think that I've ever lived in, even including as much as I love London. And so we started peeking around, and then I thought, no, like, we're looking at these smaller towns. Like, I love Seattle. I want to be here. But unfortunately, at that time, I had given the idea at that point to Paul. And then he ran with it. And so we actually got on a plane, and I think we visited Missoula, and we visited Boulder, and, North Bend and Washington and all these places. And we ended up falling in love with Bend. So we decided, okay, well, we do want to move there. But at that time, there was no work from home, right? Because this is, gosh, at that point, 2015, I think.
Yeah.
And so we ended up saying, all right, well, we know we want to move to Bend eventually. So what we'll do is we'll sell one of our investment properties in Seattle, and we will use the proceeds to buy a place in Bend, Oregon. Because then when we want to move over there, we have a place to stay, we'll start shifting our assets. So we ended up selling, what did we sell, Maynard? We sold the first Queen Anne property.
Yeah, you sold the first Queen Anne home that you had bought for $702, and then you sold it for $995.
Yes. And so we'd been renting it out. So it had been paying for itself and, paying down the mortgage and whatnot. And then, we got a great gain off of that. And that was, I think, the first time, Maynard, is that the first time you taught us about 1031s?
Yeah, I think that would be the first 1031 because you had rented that one out for a bit, right? So
yes,
and you hadn't lived in it enough for it to be your primary residence where you could defer the gains. So you had it, where you could exclude the gains from taxes. So you had to come up with another investment property to move the funds into.
Yes, and so I think because at the time I was like, well, what's the point if you're going to pay taxes eventually anyway? And since then, Maynard educated me on how it works. So if you think about it, that Queen Anne house, we were renting for $3,500 a month at that time. And I think, whatever the down payment was that we'd put in, maybe it was like $200,000 or something like that. So on $200,000 initial capital investment, we're making $3,500 a month, minus expenses. So we said, okay, well, we want to move to Bend. So we're going to sell that place and we're going to go buy something in Bend, Oregon. Well, homes in Bend, Oregon at that time for like a 2,500 square foot, 3-bedroom home, brand new, we're going for like $350 to $450.
Wow.
So we sell Queen Anne and make a gain of, $200,000 and change. But by not paying taxes on that, we then converted that into 2 homes in Bend, Oregon. So we bought one for, I think, $380 in Southwest Redmond. We bought another for about $430 in like a really awesome part of Bend. And those 2 properties start renting, and they were renting for, at least 30% higher than in Seattle. So that same chunk of capital is now producing, 30% higher cash gains, and we haven't had to pay any taxes. And then we got really fortunate that those properties, the one that was worth $430 is worth about $780 now, about 5 years later. The one we bought for $380 is worth about $610. And they're both now renting for, more than double of what, or in total. And so again, that same 200, it got all the capital gains, but also the cash flow kept increasing because of the 1031. Am I explaining that very well though, Maynard? Or
Phenomenally.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
That's
could be
really
the
cool.
best explanation of a 1031 I've ever heard. I mean,
Yeah. You know, and timing, right? Can feel fortuitous, but if you're again trying to look at it from a long-term perspective, over time, real estate assets appreciate. Always. Over time, rent appreciates. So you get into the property at the right time, you've fixed your payment from a monthly payment perspective, and cash flow continues to increase over time. So, and then in the meantime, you're getting capital gain, or you're appreciating. So you're leveraging up just from a small investment that over time makes a ton of sense.
and so that, you know, not everybody's in a position where they can hold on to properties when they move to a new one. So we're really fortunate. But if my friends ever have a chance to do that, I always really encourage them to. And we've been so lucky. Now, one thing I learned on the rental side is you need even like your lease and the addendums to the lease to be up to current law in whatever city you're in and whatever state you're in. So most places will have a renters association for owners. And if you're going to manage the property yourself, you want to join that association. And that association, for example, there's a great one in Seattle that they'll give you current lease forms that you can use. So you're covered there legally. And they'll give you legal advice as like tenant laws change and things like that. Because obviously you always want to be ethical and, you know, unimpeachable in how you're running those properties. And alternatively, you know, we've had plenty of properties where now I have a property manager that handles those things, and that's great too.
That was actually going to be my next question. Was it sounds like you know all there is to know about renting out properties monthly. So I'm curious to hear about your experience both rent or managing properties yourself, but then also, you know, you said you're now using a property manager.
Yeah, so that, you know, it's so personal, and I think it goes back to, you know, Michael, what you've been hitting on of just knowing yourself and what you're comfortable with and you're not. And so if you're someone who feels like just really, really confident that you can stay on top of the laws, and, you know, if maintenance issues come up, you've got vendors that can help you solve that, or maybe you're really handy, you can go fix that yourself, then great. For me, I'm not a particularly handy person, and I manage all of our properties. And also just for me, I did feel anxiety. Like I said, I'm a little bit of a big feeler about staying on top of the right laws. So for me, there's been a huge amount of value in hiring property managers. You know, we had a great one in Seattle with a niche realty, and they did a phenomenal job. We have a great one in Bend with North Star Property Management. So I think right now we have we have 3 current normal rentals, and then just the new surprise one that I'll tell you about, Maynard. 2 of them, I'm having a property manager manage. And so they charge 6% a month. Mm-hmm. And then I think about half of the monthly rental fee to find a new person. Mm-hmm. But they handle everything for us, and they keep it up to breast with the law. And for me, that's really a good value. The third property, I don't, only because it's a really, really sweet elderly couple who treat it like their home. They literally pay for all the maintenance themselves, and they're just very, very low maintenance and low risk. But even for them, I do have our property manager write the lease for me. So I make sure that they are totally covered from a legal perspective. Does that answer your question though?
It does.
Yeah.
I want to hear about this property though. I want to hear the surprise property.
Yeah.
Come on. Don't leave us hanging.
Maynard? I'll follow your lead.
Yeah, let's hear about it.
So there's been some adventures, you know, in between then and now. But so most recently, we were supposed to go to Hawaii in October, and that was right as literally like Omicron started coming up, and the governor of Hawaii was like, "Please don't come here." And we're like, "Oh man, okay." So we canceled Hawaii, and Paul again is such a genius in this. He was searching around, and he found a place called Brasada Ranch that is. It's only about, 18 miles from Bend, so about 40-minute drive. It's in Powell Butte, Oregon, which is a gorgeous area. And he's like, they have room, so let's go there. And we went, and we had the time of our lives. I mean, they have a swimming pool that they heat during the year. So in the cold of October, we could go out, get in the pool, and have a view of like the Cascade Mountains. I mean, it was phenomenal. And we'd been talking about wanting a second home or a cabin. And we thought about it, and we just thought, if we buy in a place like the Metolius that's surrounded by forest, how do we feel about maintenance? How do we feel about fire risk? All these things. And so we're at Brasada having a great time, and we thought, let's just see if they have any, homes for sale, because it's kind of a developed community on this ranch. And we drove around and we found an awesome place. And so we decided to go for it. But the challenge is, financially, we're not in a place where we can just outright afford a second home. So we had to figure out how we could finance it. Mm-hmm. And so we found a cool company called Avant Stay. And I'm kind of in the early days with them, but so far it's been good. And they have a really cool model. So what their model is they say, look, we want to be a true partner, meaning we will put some skin in the game with you if you want to buy a property and do like Airbnb style short-term rentals with it. And the way that we'll invest is, you'll have your chunk of days as an owner where it's set aside for you. The rest of the time we'll manage it. But in addition, we will furnish your property. So we'll spend, $50,000 and professionally design it like hotel quality. I mean, it is stunning.
Wow.
And we buy because we do this so many times, we buy all the furniture at cost. And I think they're actually part of Marriott, so they get special deals. We get it faster, so everybody's worried about supply chain, but we can get the furniture done in 6 weeks. And then literally when all the furniture's in, we'll store it, and then we'll come out to your house. We'll have professional white glove movers. We will move every single thing in. We'll have stylists there that will be hanging pictures, popping popcorn, setting out the glasses of rosé. We'll photograph it, and then we'll list it, and you're off to the races. And we just thought that was a really compelling value proposition, because all of the challenges you think about doing a short-term rental, of furnishing it. I mean, Maynard has incredible taste. He just went through this, right?
Yeah. Oh, unbelievable. I'm like, where is this avant-garde?
Yeah, no kidding.
We're very happy with the outcome, but it did not take, that quickly and that turnkey experience. That's fantastic, right? Which a lot of busy families can do. So it allows you to invest and get a phenomenal experience, and one you can use as well. That's amazing.
Well, and the funny thing is the whole turnkey idea of I'm going to hire a real expert who will handle this with loving care the way I would, but I don't have to be there, was from you. Because when we wanted to start selling some of the properties in Seattle after we had moved to Bend, I remember I was talking to you about it, and I was like, I really think it's the time to sell. We want to do some other things. We had Brasada on the mind, but I just don't know if I can get to Seattle. I'm watching Layla full time. I'm consulting. And you told me you have a concierge service, and you said, literally, it will be totally hands off for you. And you did that, I think, twice for us. And I didn't have to do anything. It was amazing. It was the best experience. If I could sell everything that way, I would do it. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for trusting us. I mean, I think it takes a partnership, right, with any relationship, especially in a business relationship. But you trusted us to make the decisions, help you, and we trusted, you, and it all worked out. So thank you.
Yeah, it worked so well. And I think, things in particular, like lessons learned from that for people that are trying to buy a property or sell a property in a state that you're not there. Definitely the trust with your agent. I mean, you have to trust them to practically sign checks for you. And I think what I loved about the experience of selling the properties in Seattle after we had moved to Bend was, I think you first went out and did kind of a site assessment. So we knew before marketing it, the house is in this type of condition, and you'd need to spend on these types of things to get it up to speed. So I felt really clear going in what the plan was. And then I loved that you had a team member who was assigned who oversaw all the details. So if we needed to fix a window or we needed to paint this, that person would always go to the home, be there with the vendor, manage the vendor, even pay the vendor. And so I didn't have to worry about any of it. It was just like one day the house was beautifully staged and in great shape. And then obviously you're graded based on sales price and all that. And then at the end, I literally just got an invoice of things we'd already pre-agreed that there were no surprises, saying, hey, we covered all these costs for you. This is how you can reimburse us. And it was just so easy and wonderful. So thank you. That was very, very helpful.
Sounds like a great program, I tell you.
Are you in charge of that
Is
program,
this recording,
Justin?
by the way? We got to make sure that's recorded. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's good to have a good team in place to be able to do that. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. We're fortunate to have a good team. We had somebody project managing it and, communicating the entire time. And it takes a great team to get a great result.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I didn't know what else you were curious to talk about. There's one other lesson learned I'd love to share, but aside from that, I'd love to follow your lead from here.
Let's see what's next on my list. I believe it is that last lesson you want to share before we.
Oh, wow. It's like we're still aligned. I know. So the last things that we've been thinking about are, where to go from here with investing. So we ended up selling the Dexter property via that process, that concierge process I just shared with you with Maynard's team. And we 1031 that into a place in Bend that has a full house on the property. And also it has what's called an ADU above the garage. Do you guys know what ADU stands for? I don't.
Additional dwelling unit?
Accessory dwelling
accessory.
unit.
Accessory. So this is that idea of like a small unit that is standalone, like it has, a kitchen and a bathroom, et cetera, but it's like a small unit on the same property. And is this a thing in Seattle? I mean,
yeah, it's changed recently, but yes, it's starting to become more of a thing where if there's an opportunity to create another living situation to allow, especially in a dense city like Seattle. So I don't know how it is in your market. But.
Well, they're doing similar things to my understanding where they're putting limitations on it now. And I don't remember if it's, you can't have one unless it's this far away from another one or what it is. But what we realized when we were going from the Dexter, which was that single unit to this new place, is you can charge more when you have two doors. So we, again, we bought the Dexter place for $430,000 with about, $150,000 down or something. And we were charging about $2,400 a month for rent. When it came time to sell that place, we sold it for $670,000, so $430,000 to $670,000, and we 1031 that into this new Bend property that's worth $840,000. So that little 150, and that's a huge chunk of cash, but in comparison, is now buying us an asset that's worth $840,000, and the rent on it is $4,200 a month, hopefully $4,400 quite soon.
Yeah.
And the reason is because we're renting the main house out for I think about $3,500 a month, and then we're renting the ADU out separately for $1,000 a month to a separate tenant. And I think if it was just that one home, or if we were even leasing to the same tenant, it wouldn't go for as much as having those two doors. So things we're thinking about are multi-tenant properties. We're also thinking about commercial with what's the triple thing? The triple
net.
What is triple net again?
Triple net. Oh, you're putting me on the test, but we'll skip that one.
Okay, no worries. And I'll tell you, and then you can tell me.
Exactly.
I think it's that with commercial properties, that tenant pays the property taxes, that tenant pays the maintenance costs, and that tenant pays one other thing. So when you think about getting into that, you're going to have tenants that when they leave, it might take longer to rent that space, but they should be longer term tenants and they're paying a bunch of your costs. So these are things that are on our mind for the future.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's triple nets in the commercial space. And then a lot of people, this is what happens, they 1031, it can go from a little single family home where they became a landlord and didn't know they were going to be. And then that appreciates. It can go into a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. And at that stage, you're still buying under a residential loan program. And then once you get above that, you move into the commercial loan program, which requires different requirements. But that's the beauty of the 1031, and the tax codes are really built to encourage people to invest in real estate long term.
Yeah, we've been very grateful for that. So, what's crazy is kind of our dreams of when we could retire keep getting younger and younger. Because our real estate portfolio should put us in a position where it kicks off enough cash for us to live on. And then, our market nest egg can just keep growing. Because, usually with your market nest egg, that's going to take you well into your 60s. And then also you can only draw down a small percentage of that before it starts eating into the egg itself. So we're really thrilled with this as part of our strategy. We're really grateful that we met Maynard. And in addition, we've become friends, which I'm so happy about. And, we love you and Lisa and Kenji, and we love catching up with you. So I was very happy to get to share today. Yeah. You've been a big part of our lives.
Sarah, I just think it's super inspiring that this all started, you know, where you're at now, it all started by you like raising your hand to do something big, right? So, and then since that first purchase with Maynard's Excellence, of course, right? Like, look how many things this has like doubled, tripled, spun into. You know, now you're, you know, multiple properties, you've got your dream house. I mean, it's just awesome. Really
Thank
cool.
you. We're really fortunate and we're really grateful. You know, we know it doesn't always go up right away, and we're really, really grateful. So thank you for saying so.
Yeah, something that I'm sure felt very overwhelming, especially as Michael said earlier about buying a place when you're overseas, and then, you know, buying that first house, and then all of a sudden you've bought and sold all these different properties, and, you know, now you've got one that's now a short-term rental opportunity as well, and that's a whole different, you know, investment type. So yeah, I mean, well
that's
done.
the thing. I keep thinking we're done, like we're done.
Yeah.
But it's fun. Honestly, it really is fun. And I think as you start to do it, you know, my first fear was like, we won't find tenants. You always find tenants. And, you know, that's another great call out for property managers is they will know the price per square foot that your home can achieve because they cover the market. And so when you consult with one of those to do, you know, pricing on your rental, you don't have to just guess, like they really know. And so I think we're starting to realize, no, the home will always rent. And if there's something to fix on the home, you will always find a solution. I think that's given us a lot of confidence. And you know, what's crazy with this new place out at Brasada Ranch, Maynard, they're forecasting will gross, you know, $178K a year.
Wow.
And now they take a chunk out of that for their percentage. And then, you know, you have maintenance costs, you're paying the mortgage, but all of a sudden you find yourself in this position where you're like, I can actually see how we can have a vacation home that's, you know, a good investment. And also then we're not paying for a month of vacation a year and having that access to the golf course and the horses and all that good stuff. So it's pretty remarkable, but you just need a team of really great experts that can get you the information you need to make good choices.
Yeah, and that's amazing from long-term rentals, right, which you still have, and this is your first entry into the short-term world.
That's right.
Yeah, which is definitely the trend that's happening in the market right now, and you've got an expert to help you manage through that.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So is that kind of picking up? You're seeing that people are starting to take advantage of that?
Yeah, absolutely. In this more mobile world, like you're finding people, whether it's they want to live half the year somewhere else, so they'll buy an Airbnb somewhere else, make some money, be able to work there remotely, or it's weather-based. So not only for people who are investing, but just people who are living. So there's demand from, you know, renters who are wanting to get out of the area and live somewhere for a while, right? And they use an Airbnb and they work remotely. So there's maybe the benefit of this, you know, what's happened over the last few years that nobody expected is being in this more mobile world and forcing people to.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I think it's cool that you've done it yourself. And so you've lived through that experience. So you have a good, you know, perspective that you can share with people that are interested in investing that way too.
Yeah.
We want to come stay at your house too. It looks awesome.
Now we have reasons to visit each other again. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, it was awesome having you on, Sarah. We miss Paul, and so say hi to Paul as well, and Layla and Jack. It's amazing what can happen in 10 years, especially when you had not initially planned any of this, right? Other than a guy from the UK who met an awesome American girl and he moved back to the States and, you know, you got your first place. So that's amazing.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. It's, you know, I think you get in the game and then you put, you know, one step at a time to your point. But it's been such a pleasure. And, you know, we love your team. We love working with you guys. I love referring people to you. So thanks for doing what you do, because we could not have done this without you. But it's a pleasure to see you. I hope we get to see you next time you come to Bend.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right, take care.
All right.
Talk to you later.
Bye,
Thanks, Sarah.
That was amazing. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, guys, for joining us again, and looking forward to the next one. I think we've learned a lot there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think one of the main takeaways that I take from what Sarah was saying today was just, you know, the fact that even though you don't have a plan, a lot of great things can come from it. And, you know, you just continually look forward and, you know, take what's ahead of you and just move forward with it. And, you know, you can make some serious money and have a lot of great resources. So
Hear, hear.
Get in the game.
yeah, get in the game. Exactly.
Right.
Let your money work for you. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Cool. All right.
Until
Cheers.
next time. Bye, Sarah.